Hello, I am Beck. Welcome to my channel. Today I'll be drawing a D&D character based on the roll of the dice.
Let's bring out the Tower of Destiny!
As you can see, I've changed up the way that I'm rolling these days, including a wheel. I don't know if I like the wheel. Let me know if you like the wheel, because otherwise I'll just choose a background based on what I think works best with the class and subclass and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm assigning the ability scores the way you're supposed to, where you actually use dexterity as the highest if you're a rogue, and etc, etc. I'll get into that later, but yeah, New Player's Handbook. I'm just using information from the New Player's Handbook for the next few videos. I don't know if I'll get bored of them though, because there's not a lot of animal type creatures in there, that like it's excluding a few species, no longer called race, excluding a few species, but in order for me to sort of retain the information that's on the new pages, I'm going to be focusing just on that. So, these are the inspiration pictures I have gathered for Rogue Arcane Trickster Farmer Goliath, which is, you know, a lot more than just saying Goliath Rogue, but it's more descriptive. It paints a better picture, and as you can see, I've got a little bit of the mage hand going in the corner there. I've collected information on Goliaths now, saying that they sort of resemble whatever giants count as their kin. So I'll get into that a little more later, but I have the definition, the physical definition of what Goliaths look like, and then under that what cloud giants look like, just so I had a little bit of reference for coloring more than anything. And then a lot of the pictures are sort of farmer related. So let's get started. Now we're starting with class rather than starting with species, because the New Player Handbook guides you in making a character by starting with what class you want to play, because that kind of, it tells you the most about the character, whereas for the sake of drawing it kind of makes it backwards, but the species is largely how you look now. Previously the species would also sort of inform what kind of skills you could have, and it still does a little bit, but by and large the class and your subclass and background give you all of the mechanical like abilities that you want as a player, and then you can play whichever species you like, largely based on how they look. Largely, we'll get into it. One of the things I love about this new layout that they've done is that right at the top of the page you have a beautiful table that summarizes all of the core traits of this class, and then you can read the descriptions if you feel like it, but if you don't feel like it you can skip over them. They're very similar to the previous ones, so rogues rely on cunning, stealth, and their foes' vulnerabilities to get the upper hand in any situation. In combat, they prioritize subtle strikes over brute strength and would rather make one precise strike than wear an opponent down with a barrage of blows. They're master thieves and excellent in dungeons at finding and dismantling traps. Some of them even have magical abilities, which we get into a little later. They've also, I love a table. They've put a table that tells you at each level what changes for you, which previously you sort of had to read through all the paragraphs to say like, oh, you get this trait, but it doesn't start until this level, blah, blah, blah. Whereas here it's like level 1, you have expertise, sneak attack, thieves' cant, weapons mastery. Level 2, you get cunning action on top of that. Level 3, you choose your rogue subclass and you get steady aim. And it keeps going up to level 20, where you're essentially a god. But if we skip through and assume that this character has reached at least level 3, we pick our rogue subclass, and that's where I've decided, well, I got Arcane Trickster. I didn't decide, the dice decided. Arcane Trickster, which means you know 3 cantrips, mage hand, and 2 other cantrips of your choice from the wizard spell list. So being that Mage Hand is a required one that you need to learn as part of your arcane tricksteriness, I've decided to depict that, which kind of, if anyone's seen my other videos, I struggle with hands. And this one was almost ironic because the Mage Hand I found really easy to draw, but the hand that she's using to cast Mage Hand looks weird. I think it's the perspective, but it's fine. It's fine. I had to draw 3 hands when normally I only have to draw 2, or I should just draw them with their hands behind their back and be sneaky so you don't actually have to draw the hand. But yeah, the rogue subclass of Arcane Trickster is essentially a thief or whatever, like your standard rogue, but they also have magical abilities and they use that in their roguish pursuits. So it says, some rogues enhance their fine-honed skills of stealth and agility with spells, learning magical tricks to aid them in their trade. Some arcane tricksters use their talents as pickpockets and burglars, while others are pranksters. Now, usually in my videos, when I talk about my character's background, I'm not talking mechanically, I'm just talking like in my head canon what growing up was like for them. But now backgrounds have a much stronger emphasis because each of the, at least new player handbook backgrounds comes with an origin feat, which gives you an extra like cool thing. So for example, the farmer background has a feat called Tough. And when you have the Tough feat, your hit point maximum increases by an amount equal to twice your character level when you gain this feat. Whenever you gain a character level thereafter, your hit point maximum increases by an additional 2 hit points. So that's pretty good. Getting higher hit points is always a good thing. And the description of farmer says you grew up close to the land, years tending animals and cultivating the earth rewarded you with patience and good health. You have a keen appreciation for nature's bounty alongside with a healthy respect for nature's wrath. You also get skill proficiencies in animal handling and nature, you get tool proficiencies in carpenter's tools, and you get to choose some extra equipment. So you can choose between either 50 gold pieces, so just money, or you get a sickle, carpenter's tools, healer's kit, iron pot, shovel, and traveler's clothes, plus 30 gold pieces. So I don't know why. I guess if someone just wants to choose their own stuff, they would go with the 50 gold pieces and then buy their own stuff, but I like it when it chooses for you. So having the farmer background is pretty cool, and it also helped me to sort of make a more original backstory for this, because usually you get a rogue and you're like, oh well, they grew up on the streets and they learned to pickpocket like that. A farmer is usually someone that you would think of as like a very honest person who would never steal, but obviously farmers are just people, so some of them are sneaky. Not all of them are just like good-natured, helpful people. So this one is definitely not. What shall we call her? I think Candice. Her name is Candice, and I think while she was growing up on the farm, she sort of started her love of dexterous things by sort of learning to use a lasso, and setting up sneaky traps to just like mess with her family around the farm. And it sort of evolved into like maybe when they were at the market selling their produce, she developed an ability to just like pickpocket people who were maybe people who'd gone to their store and were like trying to haggle down the price of something that was already like at cost, like they would be making a loss if they sold the apples or whatever for the price that the person wanted. And I think that maybe if her parents agreed to do that just for the sake of like being good, seeing as good business people in the community, like being well liked in the community would give them more business or something. I think she ended up like pickpocketing pickpocketing, that's a hard word to say, pickpocketing those people. And so she developed her rogue class through that kind of thing. Like, she never needed to steal. It was more of a like karmic thing. Now for the species, we have Goliath, and I don't really know much about the previous iteration of Goliaths, but according to the community forums and such, Goliaths have had a real glow up in this version of the Player's Handbook. I think there was something about, like, previously Goliaths used to just be like fully hairless and they had no special like traits that made them worth playing. So you're just like, do you want to play a big bald guy who, like, you could be an orc, but do you want to be a Goliath instead? Like, whatever. I think that's how they used to be. I could go and check, but I'm lazy. I'm not going to do Googling for you. You can have a look. The 2014 handbook is still available for free, like on D&D Beyond. They haven't replaced all the information. It just has a little legacy tag next to it. Anyway, new Goliaths. Their physical characteristics are reminiscent of the giants in their family lines. And that's pretty much all it says about what they physically look like. But then when you look into their traits, there's giant ancestry, and it breaks it down into, you could have a cloud giant, a fire giant, a frost giant, a hill giant, a stone giant, or a storm giant. And I went with cloud giant because as a bonus action, when you're a cloud giant, you can magically teleport up to 30 feet to an unoccupied space you can see, which is basically like Misty Step. So in addition to having Mage Hand, you could have Misty Step just straight away because you're a Goliath. And they also have things called Large Form and Powerful Build. This has to do with when you're a Goliath, your official size is medium, like most of the other classes. It says in brackets that you're 7 to 8 feet tall, so you're essentially like a very, very, very tall human. But with Large Form, starting at level 5, you can change your size to large as a bonus action, and if you're in a big enough space. And the transformation lasts for 10 minutes or until you end it. And for the duration of that, you have advantage on your strength checks, and your speed increases by 10 feet. But once you use that trait, you can't use it again till long rest. And Powerful Build means you have advantage on any ability check you make to end the grappled condition. You also count as one size larger when determining your carrying capacity. So strong, good and strong, excellent. And so it's very appealing because all of the other, I won't go into what all the other giant traits are, but each of them has a cool thing that you can have. So I thought Cloud Giant, I have a thing for Misty Step because you can be so clever about when you use it. Like you can grapple someone over the edge of a cliff and then Misty Step yourself back onto safe ground, and then the other person is just falling to their death. Just floating it, just sending that out there. Because you can't Misty Step with someone, so they couldn't hold on to you. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. I'm very excited about Goliaths. I think they're very, very cool. But in terms of figuring out what she looks like, I then had to go and look at what a cloud giant, pardon me, what a cloud giant looks like. So a cloud giant, which is not a playable race, although I guess you could talk to your DM if you really desperately want to be a cloud giant, but they're a monster, well, classified as monster, and they don't often have descriptions, but this one does. It says they are muscular with light skin and have hair of silver or blue. So not a lot of description, but enough for me to work with. So I gave my girl some silver hair and pale skin, and that's all I really needed to roll with. Especially, I was going to try and add something for scale to make her look giantish, but given that she's only like 7 to 8 feet tall, she wouldn't be towering over, like if she was standing next to a truck or something, she would just be tallish next to the truck. It wouldn't be like coming up to her shin or something. So I decided just to leave it. But yeah, that's what she looks like, and this is what I mean when I say the species gives you a little bit of physical description but there's not that much in terms of mechanics that they've added to it, because previously if you had an elf, then I think you had like extra intelligence, and you had certain magical things that, like, you still had the misty steppy thing, like some magical things come with your species, which makes sense because if like certain magical traits would travel through a bloodline. But being intelligent isn't something that a whole race of people would have, or a species would have. That's an experience thing. So you would be intelligent based on how you grew up, based on your background. And that's why they decided to change that sort of element of it and say that, like, you really need to think about what your class and your background are, compared to, say, choosing an elf because you want them to be very clever, because you want them to be a wizard. It's more a case of, you're a wizard, so you are intelligent, and you can be an elf if you want to, but you could also be an orc and be equally good and equally intelligent. If that makes sense. I feel like that makes sense. Yeah. Now with the abilities, I've sort of mentioned it already in the video, but I've arranged them this time not by just in order of what I roll them. So usually I do the first roll is strength, the second roll is dex, so on and so forth. The way you're really meant to do it is to roll all of the numbers and then assign them based on what skills you want your character to be strongest in and what skills you don't really think they'll need that much, or think it'll be funny if they're really weak in certain areas. You can't multi-class unless you have a certain level. I think it's like 13 across all the levels. So if like you wanted to be a rogue and a barbarian, you would need at least, I think, 13 in dex for rogue and 13 in probably strength or constitution or something for barbarian. If you don't have those scores, then you might need to shuffle around what you have, or like do a little point buy where you take something away from one of your other abilities and add it so that you have the right scores to allow you to multi-class. It gets kind of complicated. It makes sense while you're doing it, but when it's trying to be explained, it's very weird and complicated sounding. Anyway, for the rogue, her primary ability is dexterity, and her proficiency saves are dexterity and intelligence. So I place those two as the highest. But in terms of like, how did she come by these? Like if I'm making up the background and tying it in with farmer, I would say that, like before, you have to be quite dexterous when you're working on a farm. You can't fumble things and be clumsy and not get really badly hurt. So the lowest score I felt would be charisma. I don't think she's had to socialize with many people outside of her family, and I think in terms of playing tricks and things, her goal is to not be seen and not get caught. So she doesn't have very good practice in lying. Like if she gets caught, it's pretty obvious when she's lying, and even though she can make herself really big and stuff, she doesn't look that threatening. So she also doesn't have that intimidation going for her either. But she is very intelligent and she is very dexterous, and she's above average with strength, constitution, and wisdom. So all around, she's quite talented. She's just not great at social stuff. If we're thinking about why Candice would join an adventuring party, I think it would have to do with loyalty to her family and her farm. So if something is putting her farm in danger, she would be motivated to go and fix whatever that problem is. Although you could also have her just like going to a local tavern every evening because she's, I guess, trying to be more social. She might not realize that she's bad at being social. She's bad at charisma. But she goes to have a drink, maybe a quiet drink, and maybe an adventuring party scoops her up from there. I don't know that she's necessarily treasure motivated. Or, I mean, she might be revenge motivated. She might even be intrigued by the idea of increasing her rogue skills and going on a proper heist as opposed to just pickpocketing people, hard to say, and playing pranks. So, or it could be a prank motivated adventure. It could be a party full of people who just want to shake things up and play practical jokes on people who maybe don't usually get practical jokes played on them, like kings and queens and evil liches. Maybe you're not trying to defeat the Lich, maybe you're just trying to make him look stupid. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you liked this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments and I will catch you next time. Bye!